So this is North on Intervale. This is a series that explores culturally relevant topics and ideas and the impacts that they have on the students in our community today. My name is Benjamin North, and today we'll be discussing literature, representation in literature, and the connection between writing and culture. I'm joined today by Eva, who is passionate about singing and reading. She also has a mini business where she makes and sells her very own bracelets. Eva, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm also really excited to introduce our guest today, Allan Jackson. Ty is an award-winning children's book author, literacy advocate, motivational speaker, and honorary doctorate recipient. In 2011, he founded Big Head Books, LLC, a literacy organization that aims to introduce children to the joys of reading. Ty's books have been featured on CNN, NBC Nightly News, The Steve Harvey Show, PBS, and countless other media outlets. Ty, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Okay. All right. I see you.
We don't mess around.
No, this is not a game.
It's not a game at all. So, Ty, I want to start actually, when I met you, you called me about a week ago.
Yep.
And I was just overwhelmed by your power of positivity is what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
Where does that come from?
You know what? It comes from being exceptionally grateful for the life that it is that I have, and even for the negative, if you want to call it that. Because I don't believe in a negative life. I believe in the law of attraction. If you project positivity, you attract positivity. I also attribute it to having the most amazing mom in the world. She's just my best friend and my hero. But I also attribute it to being born and raised in the Bronx, man. There's no place like it. It's a jewel, and I'm grateful to be a citizen of a native of the Bronx, and plus I love what I do, man. I'm just grateful to have this position to inspire young people, and it's a win.
That's awesome. Now, Eva, you don't really get to choose to be a student. Everyone has to be a student at one time or another, but you're also a very positive person. Like, where does that come from for you?
Well, that mostly comes from my story and my culture. I am full Dominican, and I came to this country when I was 8. So I learned the English. I learned the language, and it just came from there. I started growing. The teachers were amazing, and my mom raised me very good. I agree with our guest today, and
That's awesome. So I see that you have a lot of your joy comes from just your identity and your family, which is awesome. Ty, I want to ask you, we want to talk about your books and your writing, right? So what was your first book and what inspired you to write it?
So my first book is titled Danny Dollar, Millionaire Extraordinaire, The Lemonade Escapade. It is a story about a young 11-year-old boy who opens up a lemonade stand, and something very strange happens to him during that time, and he something happens afterwards that he totally didn't expect, and leads to a really interesting story. But along the way, he's teaching kids about debt and interest and finance and entrepreneurship and money. So it's a book that I self-published. I've sold over 100,000 copies of this book independently. And it all started from a question from my son when he was 8 years old. He asked me if he could open up a lemonade stand, and he made $50 in 3 hours selling lemonade. And he said, "Dad, what am I going to do with all this money?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So I went to my local bookstore to try to find a book to teach my son what to do with his $50. And I noticed two things when I went to the bookstore. One, there were almost no books teaching kids about money, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, money's important to all of us. But I also noticed there were so few books featuring children of color as the main protagonists in a contemporary positive way. There's lots of Underground Railroad books and Martin Luther King books and stuff like that. But there weren't like a Diary of a Wimpy Kid with a black kid on the cover, or a Latina on the cover, or an Asian on the cover. And so I thought to myself, maybe I could find somebody to write a children's book to teach kids about money with a young black protagonist. But then I thought about this quote from Gandhi: to be the change you wish to see in the world. So if someone was going to write a book about money with a young black protagonist, that person was to be me. And the rest is history.
That's awesome. And I know that you're impacting a lot of the students at our school through that book. Eva, you remember reading that book, right? When did you read that book?
I don't remember that well, but it was a school novel. We were reading it in the class, and that book part of gave me inspiration to start my own business and save money to contribute my future in the future.
I know who the star is of this podcast, by the way.
Oh, it's
and
not
it
you.
ain't me. No, not at all.
You know what? When you have kids on a podcast, they're automatically.
Well, this is not any average kid.
Oh,
here.
no.
But
But none of them
not
are.
at all. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
I have to say that Eva is representative of a lot of the kids at this school that are doing really incredible things.
That's awesome.
I
I
couldn't
love it.
be more proud. Eva, can you tell us what sort of things that you like to read?
I love to read comic chapter books. They are very entertaining, and I love the pictures, the colors, and they're just very fun to read. I also like to read American Girl books because I identify with them, and they're like all type of girls. So I identify, and I love those two type of books.
Gotcha. Okay. One more question at a time. I promise I'm coming right back
No,
to you.
you can stay here. Stay here. I'm enjoying her.
It's fantastic. Who got you into reading, Eva?
Mostly my mom. I got it from my mom. My mom was a teacher in the 2nd grade. So she actually got me into reading. There was like a lot of friends donating books to me. And then I just started reading. And this day I just found this book with a lot of pictures. And then I just kept reading from there. And I just started loving comic books. So now in my room I have this whole this whole shelf of books. And I just love reading. I just like sit in my room and read a book.
That's amazing.
Do you have a favorite genre?
Babysitters clubs.
Babysitter Club. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, sure.
When you came here from the Dominican Republic, you said at what age? How old were you?
At 8 or 7.
Did you speak English when you came here?
No.
You are a
not at all.
rock star.
She is.
I want to be like you when I grow up. You are the real deal. Love it.
You can't mess around with Eva.
No.
She is on a roll
She's
right
the
now.
truth.
Yep. Ty, so I do have a question for you now. So there's this wonderful quote that you've referenced before, actually, that I want to ask you what it means to you. And the quote is, "Once you learn to read, you are forever free." What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a quote from Frederick Douglass. And, you know, reading is the panacea to all things. If you cannot read, we'll put it in the negative. Statistics say that you are more susceptible to higher unemployment, to drug use, to teen pregnancy, to incarceration, you name it. It's directly connected to illiteracy. On the other side, when you empower yourselves with the power of reading, and I think Eva is a fantastic example of that, is that it opens up completely different worlds to you. And then you're able to see these worlds, including the one you create for yourself, in a much greater and grander light. And take the advantage of being able to be a young entrepreneur, just like she is. And I guarantee you, her love of reading was a big, compliment to be able to do that, not to mention probably a really strong family and mom, like she had mentioned earlier. Reading is, there's no more empowering form of entertainment. There's nothing that exercises our imagination and really our souls more than readings. In fact, most of great stories are derived from books, whether you're talking, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies or Harry Potter movies or Lord of the Ring movies. They were all first derived from books. So that, in its essence, kind of gives you, an example of the foundation of what reading brings.
Was there a book or a story when you were Eva's age that really impacted you in that way?
Yeah, I was reading really big chapter books at about her age. I think the first one that really hit me was Native Son by Richard Wright.
Right.
And I read it when I was probably about your age, or how old now?
I am 12.
Yeah, I was about 11 or 12 when I read Native Son. And it's a really big book, and probably I shouldn't have been reading it at the time because of the content of the book. But it was the first time that I read about a young black man. And being a young black kid myself, it was easy for me to associate with. So that was the very first book that I read that really kind of spoke to me. But my other love was comic books. I grew up really loving comic books and the lore and the mythology of comic books. And when you think about comic books and superheroes and what do they stand for? They stand for heroism and goodwill and leadership and strength and honor,
Right.
integrity, and taking care of your fellow human. And those are attributes that we all want to have, right? We all want to do that in our own little way. So, I really aligned with comic books. I still do to this day. I still play with action figures. Don't tell anybody.
I had a collection of action figures as I was a teenager, and my brother used to always make fun of me for it.
Yeah.
But it was totally worth it.
Absolutely.
Eva, I have another question for you. What about reading is so enjoyable?
About reading, I love just sitting and concentrating so much into the words that I feel that I'm in the book, I'm in the story, and I just like imagine this picture in my head. Even if the book doesn't have pictures, I just feel like I'm in the book. I'm in this journey, this amazing journey of words, pictures in my head, and just the experience that are happening in the book. I experience them myself.
Okay.
This is officially the Ava show. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, we're going to have to retitle
You're
this
going to have
episode.
to retitle this show. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Eva, so when you're reading a story that is about places that you're familiar with and people that look and sound like you, how does that change the story? Does it make it more enjoyable for you? What does it do?
It does, because I can identify and I can say, wow, maybe the author of this book was like me and that's why they wrote this book. So I'm like, I feel different because I'm like, I'm not the only one going through this situation or that went through that situation or that is like Latina or from another country. Okay.
That's awesome. I don't even know what a follow-up question would be because I think you just covered everything that I was going for with that question. Ty, when you think about students and children that want to be writers just like yourself, like what sort of words or what sort of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I tell them, there are 7 billion people on this planet, but there is only one you. You have the most distinctive voice. There's no voice like yours. There's no fingerprint like yours. There's no soul like yours. When you're writing, write with that level of authenticity. Don't try to be like anybody else because you're not like anybody else. Just be you. And if you translate your character and your temperament and your joy onto the pages, those words will come out unlike anybody else's in the world. So, so when you're writing, just be just really authentic and joyful in developing your creativity.
Got it. How is your writing, the writing that you choose to use, an expression for culturally relevant issues?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because all of my characters let me rephrase, all of my main characters are black. That's because I'm a black man, and but it's really important for my characters to reflect a broader, more diverse community. I like to say that my books feature children of color, but they're not for children of color. They're for children. I think a big mistake that many authors make is that they write books specifically for black children or specific children with specific issues. And when you do that, you remove everybody else from the equation.
Right.
A little Asian girl is not going to care about a little boy's black skin, or a little Hispanic girl may not care about a black girl's, black plight. When you write about topics that are really broad, like I mentioned Diary of a Wimpy Kid earlier, well, this is just a kid that goes to school. It's not about a white kid who goes to school. And so I think that it's really important to bring people into our world and realize that our world is no different than their world. I mean, when we're all the same, and when you put yourself and compartmentalize in boxes, black boxes, Latino boxes, it separates everybody else. So I think my books are more socially relevant because they bring out a much broader demographic. Every kid, regardless of where they're from, what gender, what race, what religious background, can enjoy and read my books for pleasure.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It's interesting that you put it that way. Eva, when you think about what Mr. Jackson just said, how does that make you feel? What does that make you think about, just telling a story so that everybody can understand it? A lot of times we emphasize sharing our own story, right?
Yeah.
Do you believe in sharing your story? How do you go about sharing your story?
I do believe in sharing my story, and I do believe that it can impact others and making them feel, like I said earlier, making them feel like they're not alone. They're like there's other people going through that. And my story is a very personal story, but is also a very impacting story because, like I said earlier, I came here at 8 years old, and then also my parents separated at that time. But it was very hard and difficult to learn the English. But it took me, I think, a half year to learn the basics, and then a whole year to learn the whole language. And then I just kept growing from there, and Like, my favorite subject now is math,
Mm-hmm.
and I just love school. I have always loved school.
She's amazing.
She is.
Hey, if I can add to what Ava said,
Go for
what
it.
I think is really important is that for people to actually be able to tell their story, I don't want to make it seem like just because I write broad books that more specific books aren't important.
Right.
Telling books about Ava's story or anybody else's story, regardless on what direction it is or how it makes them feel, they all matter and they're all important. I just think that there needs to be be more variety in the world, especially in the diverse world, because in the diverse world of literature, they seem to be very specific to a thing. My black hair, my black skin, my black life. I think it really matters to have those type of books. I think it also matters to have broader books where everybody can kind of receive them and feel like they matter as well.
Ty, you bring up an interesting issue that I actually didn't consider before this conversation, because I think when in today's society we're so kind of, I'm going to say, hyperactive about individual issues, and we kind of hone in on some of those individual issues without thinking about the broader context. And just, do you see that as well, or are you confused by my question?
No, not at all. I think we are hyper focused on compartmentalizing all our individual issues. Everybody's matter. You matter more as a white male, and I do. You have your white male issue. I have my black male issues. And what matters more? Well, what matters to you is what's more personal. I think when we have better communication, interaction, be able to share each other's stories in a way, then more importantly, maybe just to connect. It allows us to break down those barriers so that you and I don't look at each other now as white and black. We look at each other as human. And I think that's really the main objective. It is for my writing, which is why I don't compartmentalize my books. My books are broad because I want people to see not my characters as black children, but just as children.
Yeah. That's interesting because, I moved to New York City from Iowa, and to be, completely straightforward with you, I feel more at home I do in the Bronx, where nobody looks like me,
Wow.
than I do in Manhattan, where, everybody looks like me. They just wear fancier coats.
Got it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you. So I want to ask you guys a couple final questions before we wrap this up. Eva, what is one thing that you thought was really important that you learned today?
I think that how he said no one is, like, you're not supposed to, like, try to compare yourself to no one. You should be yourself in life, like, not only when writing. You should be yourself at all, like, in all ways. You should be yourself for anything that you want to do in life, and just keep going and look forward.
Thank you, Eva. Ty? What is something you want to say to Eva and all Faro students as we wrap up?
One of the things that's important to me when I'm engaging with people like Eva is to talk up. I think we very often don't show the children the respect that they deserve. I think we try to talk condescending down to them like they can't comprehend. And she is an amazing example of what happens when we respect our kids, when we talk up to them, when we try to elevate them to the level of greatness, because that's what I feel like I'm sitting with right here, right now. A really great young lady who I would love to follow her career, because I know decades from now, this young lady is going to be running things. I think she's probably running things now. So, I'm honored to be able to sit with her and get to hear her words of wisdom, and looking forward to, being part of the narrative to help inspire young people like her.
Thank you.
All right, Ty and Eva, that is all for today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.